Happy birthday.
Ready?
Yeah.
Thank you very much. That is
Great.
awesome.
Excellent.
I've been getting a lot of thumbs up. A lot of thumbs up about your music. I've been getting a lot of good looks.
Yeah,
You guys
good
sound
work.
wonderful. Absolutely impressive. Very, very impressive. Hello, everybody, and welcome to existkind. Existkind investigates all the ways that we could, can, and do exist more harmoniously with each other and our environment. And we have with us John, the director of AZ4NORML. But first, upon that introduction, I want to talk about our sponsor, who sponsors the great food. Everybody enjoyed that food, Chiba Hut. Everybody loved the Chiba Hut. I sure did. It was great. Chiba Hut's a wonderful place. You can see them online. You see those pictures. One of them is online. They have a special story. Please be sure and check out Chiba Hut because, well, they've been helping support NORML's cause. So let's be nice to them and pay them a visit someday. They'll like it, and so will you. And with that, John, please introduce yourself again.
Yes, I'm John Gettle, and I am the president of Arizona for NORML, which is the Tucson or Southern Arizona-based chapter of NORML, the national organization to reform marijuana laws.
Now, you've had a lot of recent success, and we all know that it has come into law, what we've been pushing for, and that you have played a great role in that. I played a somewhat minor role here and there. But let's talk about recent history that led us up to this moment that you and other people that are part of NORML had a lot to do with. Please tell me a little about the recent history.
Yes, well, just over a couple years ago, our volunteers mobilized to help the Marijuana Policy Project run a medical marijuana proposition here in Arizona, Prop 203. And our chapter, all our volunteers are great people in this movement, really buckled down to help collect the signatures necessary to get Prop 203 on the ballot, as well as to work to educate the voters. As you know, Arizonans have voted for medical marijuana a couple times in our past. 3 now. This is the 3rd time for sure. And some people thought that we were really a medical marijuana state based on the success that we've had in the past. But because of factors, we were not a medical marijuana state. But now we are, and it's very, very exciting. For the patients, it's going to be absolutely a lifesaver. So just tell me a little bit about the story. I mean, when this all came to you, and just what were some of the steps that you had to take personally to help make this happen? I mean, what were some of the things you talked about? What were the, as things went along? Fill me in a little. Sure. I mean, it was a huge project to get this message out there and get people informed on the issue, get them excited to vote. And so we really had to work to educate ourselves. What was Proposition 203? Sure, it was 34 pages of legal language, but really what was it? What was the details of it? So we all became really educated about Prop 203. And then we set out to do as many events as we could over the last year. Yes, you did. We were one of the busiest NORML chapters in the country. Any event that would have us, our volunteers mobilized, and we got out there and did it. We built this just great setup where we went out, educated the voters, and had fun doing it. Gave away prizes and raised money. And I was there for all of that. And I must say that I was very impressed about the progress I saw, about the growing numbers and the growing excitement. There was definitely a feel that you were going to actually succeed again, but differently this time. And you mentioned about the wording and the legal language. I helped get a few signatures here and there as I was able to, and I had to develop a story about, you know, the first 2 times, well, won't they do it again? And I told them, you can correct me, but what I told them was that the time before this one, if it had not been squashed by the federal government, if you had wanted to get medical marijuana for medical purposes, you would have needed a prescription from your doctor. And your doctor would have given you one, and that would have worked. And I guess that's state of law. But what the federal feds did is they told the doctors, if you give even one prescription, we're going to pull your license. And so it made it null and void. No doctors were willing to give the prescription. That's what I told everybody, and I told them that this was working differently, more like California, which was a working model. So since California had a working model, that this model would work. And was I relatively correct in painting that story? You were, Carl, absolutely correct. And that's where Prop 203 really made a difference from our previous attempts. Was instead of the word prescribe, which did get the DEA threatening doctors if they were to prescribe marijuana, they were going to pull their ability to prescribe anything. So the wording was changed to recommend marijuana, and the Supreme Court has upheld the ability of doctors to discuss alternative treatments with their patients, as doctors should be able to discuss those treatments with their patients. So because it's recommend, doctors are now free to prescribe marijuana. Now the state may put, or recommend, I should say, recommend marijuana. They'll prescribe any pharmaceutical treatments, but they'll recommend marijuana. And what we want to do is just make sure that doctors are educated about the new guidelines that are coming down from the Department of Health here.
So basically what you're telling me is the recent history is that you had to really kind of hustle and pull together as a team with all the things that you did and I saw and was a part of. Then you had to kind of make sure that that this package was a working package and sell it as a working package because of the, not really failure of the two, but because of the squashing of the other two. What I want to do is I want to move into the immediate, what we're doing right now. And I want to recap on, before we do that, you guys have done a lot. We're going to have some pictures run through what you talked about. You had a lot of events. You got on the newspaper. You had the marches in both Phoenix and Tucson, and I was a part of a lot of this, and I saw this, and I was just, like I said, I was really impressed by the leadership and also the previous leadership and the people that are here. So that said, let's move on to what does that mean now? Just talk about right now.
As we all know, Proposition 203 has passed. So what this does is it creates three groups, one being the medical patient, a second group being caregivers, and a third group dispensary owners or dispensary agents. So most people are going to fall into the two first categories, either a medical patient or a caregiver, somebody who will provide the medicine for that patient. It's important for each group to know what their rights are under Prop 203, and also what rules are being created for these groups through the Department of Health. So we'll know a little bit more then. But what we are doing, Arizona for NORML, is standing up for those patients wherever we can, helping to advocate for sensible rules and reasonable rules to make this program a success, but make it accessible for the patients. We don't want to create a bunch of rules that are going to make it extremely difficult for patients to get their medicine. That's not what Prop 203 is about. Remember, we're talking about 15 of the most severe conditions. These are very, very sick people. We've got to make marijuana easy for them to get, but still well regulated, as Prop 203 already has created. So for your local municipality to create additional restrictions around this, we want to make sure those are reasonable. So those public forums will be critical for medical patients, caregivers, and dispensary owners to get out and really talk to the Department of Health about these regulations, about how they will impact their business or their ability to get medicine, for sure.
Absolutely. Now so basically, if I want to keep track of this, one of the best things I can do is go to your website, AZ4NORML.org, which I'll be doing, and I would suggest you do the same thing if you're a caregiver or you want to be or need to be a medical marijuana patient. Please do that. Now, what I want to move on into discussion is I want to talk about how we can the American drug policy and how it can be improved. And me and you talked a little about this. I talked to you about the Netherlands, and you talked to me back about Portugal. And we're going to see some pictures flowing through. But the thing is there's a lot going on. The Netherlands has got some good policies that you said that need improvement, and I would agree. And Portugal is moving in. But I just have to say that I did some research. It's going to flash on the screen. And it shows me that some things that are being done have been very successful. I just want to quickly mention that one of the things I noticed in the Netherlands is they talk about one of the most insane sounding things is giving In the Netherlands, when they started giving heroin addicts heroin, the most severe unsolvable cases, apparently the street heroin person is missing from the picture, like they're not missing from the picture here. You don't have that in the Netherlands anymore, and I mentioned that to you and everything else. And you went on and talked about Portugal, but before we talk about Portugal, correct me if I'm not right. The Netherlands has been somewhat successful, and that off and on with a lot of tug-of-war, the Brits are trying to begin to move in that direction. Is that correct?
Well, the British are really following the American model. The American DEA, American drug policy, has been very influential around the world, but with Britain especially, with a lot of our funding and different relationships are tied into this prohibitionist attitude that comes out of the United States. So we are seeing, though, Europe really loosen up the laws and realize that this is a health issue and not a criminal issue. And as we can see in the United States, where we imprison more people than any other country in the world, that's really true, we see this treated as a criminal issue, and we've got to get to where we treat it as a health issue. You brought up the heroin addicts. Where they've done this, they've given people maintenance heroin. They don't have to steal anymore. They can run they can really have a life. They can do things now. They can even go back to work, many of them.
And we are going to come back to that, and we're going to go and have a little bit of music. And so let's move on to our music, which is Cold Pie, if I'm correct. And let's enjoy in that. And when we come back, we're going to discuss the more humane aspects of prohibition, how to do it more humanely.
Slept so fully, watch the rising sun in the sky, in the sky. Rise through the rooftops, into the night sky. Search the stars, search for reasons why they shine back at me, shining back at me. Yeah, they're shining. What else can I do? What else can I do? I am not the only one. You are guilty too. What else can I do? What else can I do? What else can I do? I am not the only one. You are guilty too. It's too fresh and too new. It's too new. Oh, but I worry, what if it's meant to be? What if it's meant to be? If I miss this love, if I miss this love. What else can I
missed it. And we are in the middle of a discussion about more humane ways of working with prohibition. I do want to say one thing very quickly, that existkind is neither pro-drug or against drugs. And I would say that if one must experiment, there's evidence that indicates that if you wait until past 18 to 21, if you are going to insist on experimenting, that the longer you wait, the more control you're likely to have. That's just the one piece of advice I would give, is wait and think twice before experimenting. And don't experiment too young, because evidence indicates that it's a bad thing to do and leads to more addictive properties. But that aside, we know that these things happen. There's a lot of evidence mounting that there's scientific reasons why these things happen, so it's not necessarily a moral issue every time. So I feel, and you feel, and a lot of people feel, we need to take a humane approach to the fact that society uses drugs. So we talked about the Netherlands, and they're pretty good. I like them. We talked about Britain, and you told me that they're not really, they're more in line with the United States, but I will say that I did see some things about some doctors like issuing heroin and other crazy sounding things like that we already discussed. So in some ways, I think the Netherlands is having an impact.
Sure.
And you mentioned that as well. But you want to bring my attention more, and I only had a chance to glance at it, to Portugal. So let's talk a little bit about what Portugal is doing that's above and beyond some of the others, like the Netherlands.
Yes, well, Portugal just a few years ago decriminalized all drugs. Portugal recognized what I think both of us believe in, the fact that we're not saying that drugs are not harmful. Drugs do have, depending on the drug, have issues with all of them. What we want to, and what Portugal has said, is that let's reduce the harm associated with that drug. We don't want our policies to cause more harm to the individual than the drug potentially can do to them. And Portugal said that, and they decriminalized. And what they've seen is they've seen their rates of use fall. They've seen crime associated with drugs fall. The prohibition of drugs artificially inflates the price. There is it makes the price of these products more, and people will have to steal sometimes for them. And we want to reduce that. I think all of us want to reduce that. How do we do that? We can throw them in jail like we've been doing. Clearly that doesn't work.
No, it doesn't. It's overcrowding our jails. It's costing too much money. And people come out, if they go in and they, like for a marijuana charge, and I think like 80% is it? Somewhere a high percentage of people are in jail for marijuana. When they go in, they're likely to go back, because statistics still say that about over 50%, 60% of people that go to prison go back. So if you're sending a whole lot of people to prison for, say, use of marijuana, you're kind of sentencing them to repeat that, because that's what happens when people go to prison. They go back to prison. Something happens to them in there.
Prison's a horrible place. I mean, lots of terrible things happen to people when they go to prison, especially when you're a nonviolent drug user. Prison is not the place for you to be, and we don't want horrible things to happen in prison. I don't think it happened to people in prison. You know, you should go to prison certainly for violent crimes, but for drug offenses, I think again we get to, let's reduce the harm associated with this drug. And in this day and age of computers, when people get a drug charge, that stays with you forever now. And we're doing this to a whole new generation of kids. We're turning them into felons. They get a drug charge, that sticks with your record for the rest of your life. Do we really want to be doing that to people?
Right, it could ruin a budding college career. If President Obama had been caught early in the game, what he was doing and admitted to doing, we all know what those two were, he would have not become president very likely. He would have been stuck with that charge, and it would have diminished his rise. So that's absolutely, I agree. Another thing I noticed in looking at the Netherlands model is it's very similar to Portugal, is that it wanted to reduce the harm rather than punish, and look at it as a health issue. And I think that's going to prove to be much more wise. And I think what's happened in the Netherlands shows that. Beginning to happen in Portugal, I think, is going to continue to show that. And the one thing that you said that I really must hit upon is when it's illegal, it creates an underground culture. And when you have people that are addicted to various drugs, there's that culture, that underground illegal culture that goes with it. And they don't have jobs. And they have all these problems. And with the Netherlands and with Portugal, those problems of people still have their chemical addiction, but their association with that bad culture, which is the biggest problem that was happening to them with an illegal culture, was what seems to be holding them down, in my opinion. Drug culture, when you get away from certain kinds of culture like that, you're able to just be a different person.
Be much more functional. It shows. The evidence shows that these programs work. And the fact that people using drugs on the street have to resort to sometimes the quality is not good. There's
Right.
adulterants in that can kill people, and really we know that people are going to experiment with drugs, and do we want to force them to experiment with who knows what out there on the street? Let's bring them in, let's educate them, give them the health care necessary to be a healthy adult, encourage them not to use drugs, but if they do use drugs, let's do it in a safe, harm-reducing manner.
And I saw in a debate done 10 years ago that Sheriff Dupnick was a part of, one person mentioned that if somebody wanted to use a substance that was not necessarily good for them, they could have to watch an informative film that goes with it. Just let them know what the risks are, and it's just a system. Basically, what we need is people are going to do certain things, and we want a system that cares. If you take a lot of people that are driven to do something, and we've experimented with that in the past with sex and things like that, you want a system that cares about them, a system that says okay, and I think that's the best system. And you get people, you have more and more happy, healthy people, and then your society is stronger as a whole.
I agree.
So, one thing that I want to mention that you'll find is interesting. I looked at the Portugal, and I noticed two things. One system said that the amount of heroin use went down, and the amount of marijuana, and this may sound bad, but when you think about it, the amount of marijuana use went up. Now, what I think is happening is people were switching off of the hard drugs onto marijuana. And I go on to say that if you had a system where drugs were handled legally through regulation, people would not be hopping from marijuana to harder drugs because they would be going there to get that. It would be there for them. They wouldn't go to the heroin place to get their marijuana. There would be a separation there, and a separation of what they had to go through and the regulations, and therefore it would not be a gateway drug. I think it's the illegalness that makes it the gateway drug.
I would say that's an excellent point. When people go to a drug dealer here in the United States, he or she may not only carry marijuana, they may carry lots of other drugs, and this cross availability comes in. So if we take that out of the equation, the fact that a drug dealer has these different substances available, and we use this, we switch it to a very controlled environment where marijuana is available from a licensed shop, and the other hard drugs are treated in a health clinical setting. It takes that cross availability out of the equation and doesn't expose people to those harder drugs as much. Nobody wants to get hooked on harder drugs. Nobody wants that. And if we make it, make it so that isn't likely, it's a better system overall.
I agree. So basically, I want to just recap what we said. We said that there's evidence that indicates that there's more humane ways to deal with prohibition, and one may be to discontinue the prohibition, and that it takes people away from these cultures of prohibition, such as a heroin culture would be an example, and separates from that. Also, it eliminates the gateway drug problem. Now, some people say that we won't, it's a totally different subject, that we won't get rid of the gateway problem until we get rid of alcohol, but that's a totally different story. But I just say if we make it to where it's regulated and available to those that want it through a system, that the gateway problem will end, even with alcohol.
I mean, we've already tried to make alcohol illegal once, and we all saw how well that worked. So this is the same, what we're experiencing with drugs in this day and age is the same. We can draw the same parallels to the prohibition on alcohol. You look at the drug cartels in Mexico, they're fueled by the illegality of this substance. They're making their money from the fact that prohibition is in place. We remove prohibition and they don't have their income source. And it's just, we've got to look back to the prohibition of alcohol.
So what I would say is that let's look at what happens in the Netherlands and let's look at what happens in Portugal and keep track. And if we like what we see, we might consider as Americans of picking up some of those methods. If they prove to be more humane and they prove to be better on the society, then I say that we should be next and maybe even do a better job. But we want to go back again to those that need medical marijuana and how they can acquire it. Give me a little bit more or go back and let's talk about that just a little bit more.
Yep, I think it's a great point. Medical marijuana, here we're dealing with the most severe conditions to use medical marijuana. Why wouldn't we take the patients off the drug war battlefield? And why wouldn't we help the patients to get a safe supply of medical marijuana? So once the health department comes out with their regulations, we expect patients and caregivers can start to legally acquire marijuana sometime in March or April of next year at the earliest.
I see.
Until then, patients are going to continue to have to, unfortunately, resort to the illegal market to get the medicine that in many cases is keeping people alive. And that's unfortunate. That's why we need to change this policy quickly. That's why we need to institute Prop 203 fairly, reasonably, and expeditiously. There are patients suffering and dying right now because they don't have access to medical marijuana.
I'll tell you, the one thing I want to add to that is that I've talked to a lot of medical marijuana patients through you guys, and it's almost often the same story, very often the same story. They took a whole shoebox of drugs, and they were less happy and less functional. And when they were able to incorporate marijuana for their severe condition, their need for those other drugs lessened dramatically, and they were more healthy and happy. So I just want to mention that as far as when it comes to drug use, it lowers drug use. So let's remember that. So anyway, John, we're going to go back to music, and me and you will be right back to continue our discussion. And right now we have Samson Tree. Samson Tree, we just love them.
Old pirates, yes, they rob us, sold I to the merchant ships. Minutes after they took I from the bottomless pit, but my